Hola, Internet amigos. Let's keep talking Venezuela, shall we? Let's keep talking Venezuela. I might even look into the right camera. You're getting a video every day now, 5 days a week, every single day. A new man is before you, still in development, every single day. I want to start, before I start, I want to say thank you to the supporters. I know I've been difficult. It's been really hard. It's been really, really hard. Harder than you know. But let's just move on. Let's just get stuck into it. Let's now watch Trump calls off second wave of Venezuela attacks. I will try and let them speak mostly. I may stop, but I'll let them say their piece and then I'll give you my point of view. And I hope people are starting to realize that I have no magic contacts, but I do know the formula. May get timings wrong, but I do know the formula. They may change their minds, but I do know the formula. I am 55 years old. I've been studying this for 30 effing years. I have a tenured professorship in this. I've also been hunted, hounded, jailed, beaten, bashed, harassed for 15 solid years. So I'm sorry if that upsets you. Let's move on to Trump. Trump calls off second wave of Venezuela attacks. Just to recall, by the way, Tucker Carlson, you heard all the big names. What is this war in Venezuela? Look, Tucker Carlson's in on it, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, all the detractors. And they all know damn well the US is going in there to take over. They're just quelling the herd because the narrative has been set. The US is never backing off the world. The US will expand into the world, and that is a wonderful thing. The US is going to do what it should have done post-World War II under Eisenhower, but was prevented. It owned the planet. It had its own industrial capacity. It had atomic weapons and no one could touch it. And what happened? What happened? Suddenly, Russia's got the bomb. We had, you know the story, the background. We had Major Jordan, Racy Jordan's diaries, the Silver Months aspiring, complete communist Soviet infiltration of the entire Roosevelt cabinet. I mean, Roosevelt's wife was having a lesbian affair with what's her name, Gold, or whatever her name was, who's hanging out with Mao, for crying out loud. So funny, they don't teach that in school, but they teach you about the Red Scare and McCarthyism and all, but don't seem to want to tell you about Roosevelt's wife, or Harry Dexter White, the literal Soviet communist agent, one of his chief advisors. Funny that, isn't it? Silver Months aspiring, look it up, incredible, not even taught in the damn schools. And it's never stopped. You see it flow into Israel, and we see the Kissinger network and how it all flowed in through the 70s, building up China, Russia maintaining a Russian high technology transfer via all that stuff. And we see it moving in. Now the US extends its power. For me, I get personally frustrated at who's doing it. The actors they're using are rather frustrating. I'm going to call good when I see good, and I'm going to call bad when I see bad. Jews are not running this. Jewish power is ostensibly finished. They're just sitting up there in their European castles at the City of London. Israel is not Jewish power. It's just a crime bunker. And anyone can rule that. The US will now rule it. The question is, and I see hope. I see some hope, like in this now. Remember, they told you it was all over, and yet I told you how quickly this will transfer. Why? Because the US is using its power. But it's really got to get a lot of people out of the State Department, a lot of people out of the Pentagon, and a lot of people out of all the right places. And the fact you're doing it with the Rahm and Ari Emanuel show is very worrying. Very worrying. I thought by now they would have been transferred to London by their City of London bank accounts to hang out with Arnold Milchan and other traders. But, I mean, I can't escape that. You can't escape that. You see all these good things, but then you go, what the hell is this? And if Jewish power was running the show, you don't have America take over. You just form the North American Free Trade Zone. You don't need to invade. America is literally taking over. That's completely separate from NAFTA. The Crown Corporate Canada will cease to exist in time. Literally cease to exist. Good. Crown Corporate, F off, back to your castle in Europe. Out. 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 All of you out. Personally, I'd like to see the end of all of you. If Europeans want to have kings and queens, you knock yourselves out. The rest of us will run our own lives if you don't mind. So remember, you've got a bunch of people running around trying to claim, running Russian-Israeli narratives, all right, that America is doing this and America is doing that. That's good. America, for the first time, America, Pax Americana. I don't know about you, but why don't you go and live in Venezuela under Maduro, who got $500 billion in investment? And I don't know about you, did you see $500 billion worth of investment in Venezuela? Where's all the money? You know, they froze his Swiss bank accounts. I'm surprised he didn't train at the private La Rosa Swiss private school where Kim Jong-un trained. You know Kim Jong-un, the great porn lover and friends with, what's his name, the basketball player? You know that guy? He's at a Swiss private school, the same one that Richard Helms, former head of the CIA, went to. Isn't that a little bit strange? Why talk about that? We've got other things to talk about. Come on now. You go on about China? Go live there. Go live there. Is America a hypocrite? Yes. They got a billion ways to make your life miserable. And we'll talk about that now. Let's watch this.
And straight to a Fox News alert overnight, President Trump announcing that he has called off a second wave of attacks against Venezuela.
The commander-in-chief writing, quote, Venezuela is releasing large numbers of political prisoners as a sign of seeking peace. This is a very important and smart gesture. The USA and Venezuela are working well together, especially as it pertains to rebuilding in a much bigger, better, and more modern form their oil and gas infrastructure.
As the administration works to secure a brighter future for the country, President Trump telling Sean Hannity he expects to meet with Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado in Washington next week.
Do you have any plans to meet with her? And would you accept the Nobel Prize she wants to hand to you?
Well, I understand she's coming in next week sometime. And I look forward to saying hello to her. And I've heard that she wants to do that. That would be a great honor.
Meanwhile,
She's a bit of a problem, that one. Little too left-wing for him, human rights, all that good stuff. So we'll see what happens with her. Maybe when she gets her training at the School of the Americas, maybe she'll be allowed to hop in there. But it's not about the oil. The US already owns the oil. The US already owns the Straits of Malacca, the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, the Straits of Hormuz, they own the freaking lot. It's called aircraft carrier battle groups. They can do what they want when they want. Everyone will just bow before the power of the US military industrial complex. Wonderful news. But will you at some stage begin to follow your own Bill of Rights and Constitution on a very deep level? It can't happen overnight, but I'd love to hear some rhetoric about, I don't know, the repealing of the Patriot Act under a certain time frame. How about that? And we'll talk about at the end all the things we want to hear. Let's encourage where it's positive, and we'll call it positive, and then let's criticize the crap out of the negative. But let's with the golden hope, the golden dome, the holy city descending upon us. America must rule. Somebody's going to rule. Somebody's going to rule. That is the political reality. We can bitch and whine and cry. The political reality is in a high-tech, very unstable society we live in right now. Somebody's going to rule. You're going to have to pick someone and side with them. You're going to have to penetrate in and take it over. And there is nothing stopping you penetrating. I don't know why you go Democrat, because they look like they've lost their minds, but maybe that's the plan. Or Republican, whatever. Penetrate in and get the rhetoric right and the narrative right and start to change minds over time. This will take 20 years. You cannot do this overnight. You cannot enter into politics, find that after 10 seconds you didn't get a pat on the head and a reward and an attaboy, so I give up. You've got to just consistently go in there, form friendships, relationships, pick your time, pick your rhetoric, and play the game. It's called politics. Or you can bitch and whine and get rich selling coffee mugs on the internet. And I guess a lot of people have chosen that. But this particular, they're probably calling a cliche too left-wing, but we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, she's going to do what she's told. She's probably getting a little bit of training. The US walked in there, the actual Venezuelan generals, they literally went home. No one switched on anything. They killed a lot of Cubans. Put it this way, Maduro is so loved and Maduro trusts his own military so much, all his bodyguards are Cuban. Start there. All his bodyguards are Cuban. A lot of Cuban soldiers died. Not many Venezuelan soldiers died. They literally went home. They're smarter. If you are a little rich kid dickhead in Europe, UK, Australia, America cheering on Maduro, I would like you to stop. Let's criticize America because we have to raise the bar. But let's also not play running interference defense for pieces of shit like a Xi or a Putin. They're not defenders against the evil American Jewish empire. They are the Jewish empire. They are Rothschild. I am not going to bring up now all my pictures of Xi and Netanyahu with Heinz Kissinger, who's hanging with Lord Rothschild and friends with Klaus Schwab and all the rest. I'm so sick of it. Come on. But we're still at that stage where you can't get any real messages through. The narrative should be the narrative I have been giving you for 15 solid years. We should have all had those. Look at all those pictures I've made of Kissinger and montages and all this stuff. Have you ever seen them repeated anywhere by another website or another YouTube creator or whatever? Ever? I've never seen. They're good pictures. You know, Gerhard Schroeder standing with Evelyn de Rothschild, and there's Gerhard Schroeder, like literally in a gay love affair with Vladimir Putin. Hello? Is anyone going to make any, Gazprom and the oil and gas deals between Germany and Russia? Hello? That Putin is a Russian nationalist, a Christian, when he's nothing but a low-life closet bisexual little boy, kissing little boys' tummies. Probably a golden boy, probably a pedophile himself. That's why he was promoted up through the ranks by Heinz Kissinger and Yevgeny Primakov. This narrative has not penetrated anywhere. You find me where that narrative has penetrated. It's not my opinion, it's fact, historical fact. They did a very good video on the Primakov doctrine, those guys that, I've forgotten their names. It's always linked below. But they didn't quite carry it through with the Kissinger angle and Rothschild, obviously, but it's a pretty good video. That narrative should have penetrated by now. So bottom line is, America's walked in there and walked out. First clue, you've seen Iran. Oh, please don't attack us. We're so scared. You know by now it's all bullshit. Now US is using its power. Look, Netanyahu hates Trump. Peter Singer, Murdoch, Jewish power, effing despise Trump. Whenever you see Europe going off against Trump, that's the Eurofag Rothschild network. That's who's going off against him. All right? I just don't like specific things they're doing or not doing and who he's got around him. Now, you can argue as a detective when you take over a criminal network, and they have taken over the criminal network. We're waiting. There's still things to be done, and we'll be keeping an eye on it. You and I will all be keeping an eye on it. You keep people around. You don't put them in jail. You own them. Now you use their energy because they're the people that are in there. They know over, and now you use them to get what you want. Makes sense. That's how detectives run criminal networks, for good or ill, to keep an eye on the streets, keep the good, reasonable drug dealers, get rid of the horrible ones. Okay. While they also get a lot of rental properties and make money, don't you, drug squad detectives? And we see the exact thing now. Trump is making a personal fortune out of this with his friends. Stephen Miller is a piece of garbage, as is Howard Lutnick. There's no lower form of life than Howard Lutnick. And this is where we get down to personalities and where it's kind of grinding your teeth. Must we? If suddenly you realize that Charles Manson might be useful, will you raise him from the dead, take him from prison and put him into a cabinet post? Well, it's useful. And I can't really see the justification for Chabad Lubavitch, which has direct ties into Rothschilds, other than it's a liaison, right, to tell people how things are going to be. Remember, Rothschild has no power. He has no access to aircraft carrier battle groups. He plays with money. He runs small networks. But now we'll talk about the big picture and the things that have to change. But if Jewish power was still in power, you would see Israel teaming up with Russia and China, and you would see the Russian oil and gas flowing into Germany and France, and you would see the Rothschild City of London network dominating Eurasia. That is off. I can't explain it any simpler than that. That is Jewish power. Netanyahu and Chabad are not Jewish power. Jewish power is Gerhard Schroeder in his Armani suit. It's Klaus Schwab. It's a Heinz Kissinger. It's a Lord Jacob Rothschild. It's the City of London. It's Jack Straw. It's Lord Levi. And they are losing big time. And I mean big time. The key was always put the supply chain in China, build up China, and then they would build a huge economic Eurasian Union with all the bells and whistles, all the Belt and Road, internal economic development, give the finger to America, tell them to withdraw out of the Middle East, out of Eurasia, and they could handle Central and South America. US ain't going nowhere. US is building bases. Then with the Brits are building bases in Ukraine, as I said they would, and Romania. Romania's got a huge base there. And of course up in the Scandinavia as well. America ain't going nowhere. Nowhere. America's putting a huge base in Gaza. That's how you know the party, the Jewish power political Zionist party, is over. What is to come? Well, you're going to have to decide, because if you don't tell it what to do and you don't get the right narrative, you don't talk to the right people, if you don't get get the simple basic concept that you need to be involving yourself in politics. There's no point telling grandma or the local mechanic or a couple of girls down by the ocean about this stuff. You tell military people, policing people, intelligence people. Let's face it, everyone in America's got a friend in intelligence somewhere. You tell people who are into politics. You go to political meetings and you be smart. You don't start yelling and screaming. You form relationships. You say, if they're Margie, say how wonderful Trump is, but if only he would do this, and there's some problems with that. And then, of course, you praise what's praiseworthy, and you also call out Fauci's not in jail, Bill Gates is still running around, and they got to give us some heads on the whole Epstein thing. I don't know what to tell you, and I want Chabad removed forcefully, not just from the White House. I want to remove from the United States, and I'd say they will be eventually off to Ukraine. Who knows? They might be setting some Slavic lads to deal with them. I don't know. But there's big problems still. Pete Hegseth, fucking idiot, but he delivers his lines well. Fox News presenter, he delivers his lines well. He's young, he's good looking, he's doing fitness, he's motivating the troops. I guess I can tolerate it. Marco Rubio is probably the best of all of them. He speaks Spanish, and from what I hear, is doing a pretty good job at the State Department. See, don't put crosses on your head, man. It's right there in the Bible. Don't do callous displays like that. America, you rule for everyone. You are a secular state. You rule for everyone. Okay? Everybody. Yes, bring Christmas back, do all that stuff. Yes, it was founded on basic Christian principles. Yes, I get it. But, you know, you rule for everyone. Don't isolate people. Bring in everybody. Bring in everyone. No. I remember a time as a kid, no one cared about Merry Christmas. Jews would say Merry Christmas. I don't know the Jews you knew, but the Jews only say Merry Christmas. Hindus would say Merry Christmas. Muslims would say, you can go to Dubai now, you'll find nativity scenes, and go to Malaysia and Muslims, they'll say Merry Christmas. There was never a problem. A problem has been created. So we need to weed those people out. But what is ostensibly happening is good. But you're going to find people who are going to swear black and blue. I have spent hours with people. I have sent links and narratives and stuff and laid it out, and they'll reply, you are wrong. You are a fraud. And you realize, delete, goodbye, delete. You've got to the people who are smart and can actually do something, whether it's big or small, will get it. And you're just going to have to start ruthlessly culling idiots. Just cull them out. Don't try to interact with them. Don't bother with them. If they don't get it, maybe they're just stupid. So why bother with them? Talk to people who are politically active. You can see people who are just wrong or shocked, and then you can work on them. You can just see people you're just wasting your time with. Remember, the chatbots and the armies they have pushing narratives are everywhere. Now they're pushing the North American Union. I'm sorry, they already had NAFTA. You're 30 years late. This is not NAFTA. This is a complete takeover. This is the US securing its supply chain. I said Colombia, Venezuela, and they will make it safe for investment, and they will certainly in northern Mexico, and then the whole country eventually over time. And I'm sorry, Canada, you're gone. The West will go first, and then all of you. The whole Crown Corporate of Canada will leave the face of this earth. Good fucking riddance, because I'm sick of whiny bitch Canadians. Not the good Canadians, not the good ones who go, you know, we don't like a lot about America, but we do not want this Trudeau, Pufta, wank, World Economic Forum, Carney, London central bankers in here. They're obviously love you to death. Become Americans, but a new America, which can mix a bit of socialism for the poor for a change instead of socialism for the effing rich, vast taxpayer handouts to corporate, like farmers, and you think they're giving money to some guy with 2 hogs and a couple of sheep. No, these are giant farming, transnational corporations getting free handouts from the taxpayers of America. Constant giant taxpayer handouts and subsidies to these huge companies. And that's another thing. You've got to see the transnational corporations destroyed. We have to end corporates. I mean, I can see there's kind of a place for the corporate structure on a very small scale. But we've got to end corporations like this, end them completely. And again, these are the big issues we have to talk about. Not end the Fed, take over the Fed. Who prints the money? It's got to be in the hands of the executive, not a freaking private central banking cartel. I mean, these are the number one issues we have to discuss. They're not exactly getting discussed at the moment, are they? We need to talk about it. Let's carry on.
Top U.S. oil executives are headed to the White House today for a meeting with the president on the future of Venezuela's oil. And what does that mean for you and your family? Donald Trump says it means that lower oil prices will happen all over the world. Would be a good thing.
It's a huge deal. Look, it's going to take upwards of $50 billion or more to rebuild Venezuela's oil infrastructure. It's owned by a state-run company, and they have literally let it go to shambles. And now these companies will come in, invest reportedly over $100 billion to get the infrastructure going again. But at the end of the day, Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves, so the potential is tremendous.
So the president's going to meet among the companies, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and ExxonMobil. Here he is talking about what he expects.
We're going to be right here in the White House. We're going to meet with the, biggest oil people in the world. They're all coming here. The top 14 companies are coming here. They're going to go in. They're going to rebuild the whole oil infrastructure. They're going to spend at least $100 billion. And it's an unbelievable oil that they have and an unbelievable quality of oil and amount of oil.
What does that mean in terms of America's new partnership with Venezuela?
Well, it means lower oil prices all over the world, which is great for everybody. It means lower oil prices for America, which I have it down. Don't forget, I inherited a mess. They talk about affordability. There was no affordability under Biden. He had the worst inflation in history, the highest and worst inflation in history. Prices were through the roof, and I'm fixing it.
So he on average.
Okay. Number one, Venezuelan's oil is some of the crappiest oil in the world. It's heavy, dense, mucky crap. You get the stuff from Saudi, it's light, sweet. However, most of the refineries on the Gulf Coast in America are actually designed to process Venezuelan oil. Conversely, most of the Venezuelan oil infrastructure, if not all of it, was handled by Exxon and Chevron. So Exxon and Chevron never left. They claimed the last 5 years things got tough and there was agitating in China. Fine, but you're kind of forgetting to admit that your sworn enemy, Chavez, particularly your sworn enemy, was kept alive by American oil companies. So I'm a little confused. Are you a little confused? You see how the game's being played? But then we could ask, are they American oil companies? I mean, ostensibly they're there. Who's running them? Well, the globalists are running them all. The more American power you see put into the world, the less Jewish power is running it. Remember that. The key was always to make Eurasia great again. Who's running Eurasia? Why is it we never hear? You never hear about the Jews of New York and above, but we never hear about all those Hufjuden. There's Hufjuden. We got to get that up. You can never understand this until you understand the concept of the Hufjuden or court Jews of Europe. It is the key to understanding who Jewish power really is. They're not Jesuits. It's not all your little lizard people, all right? The Jesuits, they're Jews. They're Jews. They're all Jews. They've infiltrated the Vatican. They've infiltrated everyone. They infiltrate the Federal Reserve. They haven't infiltrated the Vatican. The Vatican runs it all. Then why is the Vatican broke? I mean, I can understand simple concepts that a lot of people can't seem to understand. If Jesuits rule the world, Jesuits are a power, but they don't rule the world because the Vatican is poor. And if I am exposing the Jewish conspiracy, why did so many Jesuits come to me and were going, why is that? Aren't I betraying their grand secret of developing Israel? I'm sorry. See, your theory, it's not that they don't have power, but you keep saying, or that they're good or evil. The point is, you keep saying the Jesuits and the Swiss bankers. Well, who are the Swiss bankers? Court Jews, Hufjuden, the intermarrying of the court Jews with the old families of Europe. And then they get told that they're all related to King David. These people don't go to synagogue. If they wear a kippur at all, it's all for show. They consider Chabad and the ultra-Orthodox as brown shirts, and they'll get rid of them the first chance they can. Court Jew was a term used in early modern period Europe, particularly in Germany, and Germany is central. For Jewish moneylenders who lent or managed money to the upper classes in return for social privileges. The class first emerged in the High Middle Ages, notable examples being Aaron of Lincoln and Vivelin of Strasbourg. The rise of the absolute monarchies in Central Europe brought many Jews, mostly of Ashkenazi origin, into the position of negotiating loans for the various courts. They could amass personal fortunes and gain political and social influence. Oh, wrong camera again. I really got to fix that. Let's read that again. They could amass personal fortunes and gain political and social influence. However, the court Jew had social connections and influence in the Christian world mainly through the Christian nobility and church. Due to the precarious position of Jews, some nobles could ignore their debts. If the sponsoring noble died, his Jewish financier could face exile or execution. The most famous example occurred in Wittenberg in blah, 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 blah. Then after the death of his sponsor, Charles Alexander, Oppenheimer was put on trial and executed. In an effort to avoid such fate, some court bankers in the late 18th century, including Samuel Blücher, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, and Aaron Elias Siegelman, successfully detached these businesses from these courts and established what eventually developed into full-fledged banks. They also changed their names. They also became Christians and potted around Christian Bibles and changed their names. You will only understand how it works when you understand the concept of the Hofjuden. About the only royal family that's really pushed them aside are the Windsors, but only because they want to kill us all instead of them. So pick your poison. Remember, the Windsors never set foot, and they're all Gothenburg, yes I know, they're all related to the Germans. They never set foot in Israel, ever, ever. And they're itching to get back into the Middle East. Itching. They're going to tell America, can we please handle the Middle East? Can we please handle the Middle East? I don't think you should handle fucking anything until you grow up and get a republic and get rid of your king. I'm sorry. If you want to have kings and queens, you know, you can exist. Sure, I want to come visit, see the beautiful palaces and the beautiful history of Europe and the UK, the home of the Magna Carta. If you want to, well, what's the point of having a king and a queen if you've got a parliamentary democracy ostensibly? What is the point of them? Why are they still stiffing around? Why do they have amassed huge fortunes? I'm sorry, if you are ostensibly a Christian country, if you've got Jesus on your lips every second of the day, do you seriously think Jesus would give these people the time of day? They would whip them out of their castles. So put Jesus off your lips, convert to Chabad Judaism, start worshipping money, which you do. That's where you need to go, where the devils reside, in love with money and power. Don't you dare quote Jesus every 5 seconds, go to church, be coronated. You're just using the whole corporate structure of the church system to control people. Can you seriously not read your own Bible? Watch Jesus whipping them from the temple, calling out their incredible greed and wealth, the hypocrisy. And do you seriously think he would give King Charles the time of day? Any of them? People are hungry in the streets. People are in fear. They've got cameras everywhere. They're being thrown in jail for speaking simple truth. Do you seriously think that Jesus would approve any of this? Fuck the monarchies. I want them all gone. And in fact, be grateful we don't lop your heads off. How about that? Understand the court Jew, and you will truly begin to understand everything. You will understand who is who in the zoo. Just because they come on the telly, hey, you going, Cobbo? My name's Bill Smith, and I'm from Australia, and I happen to be a multi-billionaire. Worked hard from the day I was born. And then you find out that, you know, the guy's really Jewish, got a Jewish name, he's second generation. He's traveling to Israel every 5 minutes, and his real name's Blichtenstein, his old family name. And he's getting his money out of a Jewish foundation from one of the multi-billionaire foundation holders. I think we've seen this game before, don't you think?
They used to get 3.5 million barrels per day in the 90s. So if that continued, but all of a sudden Chavez comes in, he nationalizes everything, and now they're down to 1.1
And you kept working with him?
million barrels a day. So what could happen if we could take over that? We built refineries just to handle Venezuelan oil back in the 80s and 90s, and we haven't done much in terms of refinery, but we do have the capacity to help out. So what could we do? We could increase the revenue of that country, make it rich again. But what I think is so important, I never really thought about this, it's basically leverage. So if Venezuela goes south, if they start being anti-American, if they start capturing people off the streets, if they start harassing, let's say, oil executives, if they decide to go in, and we hope they do, then all of a sudden they're totally cut off with their own commodity to keep themselves sustained. If you cut off, as we're seeing now with Cuba, if you cut off their way of bringing in revenue, you'll have an insurgency within Venezuela. So it's in their government's interest to do what we say. Rather than put 20,000 people on the ground, we're doing it through economic means, which is close to brilliant.
When Chavez came,
It's brilliant. How is it brilliant? They're using American power, but do you see the arrogance of that asshole? The absolute disassociative. He's completely divorced from reality. How do you create an insurgency? Well, it's slightly complicated. Number one, you hated. You ran around with death squads through the 70s and 80s with Kissinger. Instead of having the supply, here's the key. Why on earth would you put the supply chain for the United States, which is really the engine of the economic world, why would you put your supply chain in Asia, 5,000 miles away at the foot of Russia and Europe? I'd say you'd have to be a Kissinger Rothschild asset trying to build up your own area of influence at the expense of the other, which is the United States. If you were a pan-American nationalist post-World War II, even though you're keeping the War Powers Act going for that fraud to keep the economy, okay, do it for a while, but you could have come up with something better. Look, it's very easy to keep the world stimulated. They're going to give you every excuse in the book why they need to do this or why they need to. No, they just want us locked down. They don't want to admit why they are pushing this technology so fast. We could do this slowly with citizen participation and people like a United Nations, a place where people can talk. They're not going to do it because they're corrupting everything that we come in contact with. Under no circumstances should there be any grassroots political interaction between local communities, the federal politics, and international communities. We must put the UN there, we'll dominate it, and we'll corrupt the crap out of it to give the fools any idea that anything is actually going to change. And they'll come up and then they'll criticize each other. Nothing changes. But it's just to give the impression and the bizarre delusion that there's dynamic political stuff, but nothing changes, ever. So now you're going to tell me these insurgencies, number one, Europe. You never hear about France and Sweden, especially France, big time, is in here. You hear about the Cuban DGI. You don't hear about all the Cubans training in France, though, do you? All these people I meet in Mexico learning French. You don't hear about France much, do you, at all? You don't know the long history of France and Mexico? I didn't even know about it. Napoleon was there. I didn't even know. Well, can't know everything, but I was genuinely surprised. I didn't realize how powerful the influence of France was in Mexico. Thank you for the beautiful architecture. Plenty of it here in Querétaro. Very nice. Not against the French, understand? But who's been running this stuff the whole time? Right? It's not the French people. Who are their elites? Macron, Rothschild. It's all the same damn people. Europe. So we hear about Russia's here, Cuba's here. Who else is here? The Chinese are all in here. Don't hear about the French. What about the British over there? When I say British, I say Crown Corporate. Lots of people running around Central and South America and Mexico. And it's not just Russians and Israelis or Israel, Russia, same thing. If I say Israel, I mean Russia. If I say Russia, I mean Israel. Same group. It's not just them. It's the French. If Russia was a nationalist sovereign country running these evil plots, all their bank accounts would be in Moscow. Where are all their bank accounts? It's in Switzerland, it's in Deutsche Bank Germany, and it's in the city of London. Work it out. These people have no confidence or no trust in their own countries because they're robbing them blind. All of them. All of them. No insurgency can take place without outside interference. It just can't happen. When the US uses its power, it's total. Everyone gets in line. The reason you've never seen it, because the US has never been run by United States, Pax Americana, American nationalists, ever. You've actually got it now, for good or ill. For good or ill. Because let's face it, it's a bit of a clown show out there. You are watching American power at work. And when America clicks its little fingers, every dog bows and gets in line. Every dog shuts its barking mouth and gets in line. The reason you've never seen it before is because Pan-American nationalists were never in charge. Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Kitchener and Associates, Foundation System of Funding, thank you, Norman Dodd, the corruption, the Epstein, and there's dozens of them, blackmail, sexual blackmail rings, the takeover of critical infrastructure. There's still a lot of work to be done to free the United States from these filthy, stinking, demonic animals who mainly reside in Europe. They are in Europe. And when I saw that halfway, oh God, I can't stand them, but JD, yes, I can't stand them, but you're going to have to get a little more complicated. Because JD Vance ain't running anything. Peter Thiel, his best buddy, and some rumors dictate more than that. He's not running anything. It's Department of Defense. A lot of corruption down there, and they don't want it out. I'm telling you, they're trying to fix it, but apparently they want to fix it very quietly, and I'm not sure how you do that. How do you fix something very quietly? Everyone's protecting everyone. Everyone's waiting for people to die. Once they're dead, suddenly the Senate hearing committees happen. Oh, unfortunately, they're on dead, so I guess, we'll just move along and learn our lessons. No one ever goes to jail at that level, ever. But when I heard JD Vance and Donald Trump go after Europe in the strongest, you never talk this type of rhetoric in politics. Never. Trump did. The only reason the EU was invented, he didn't say F us, but it was strong words. Next, what was that? The only reason the EU was created was to F the United States. It was something like that. Like he used a really derogatory, powerful term. And then JD Vance says, maybe we'll just let the Straits of the Suez Canal go, and then what's Germany going to do? What's Europe going to do then? Hyperinflation. I mean, these are straight out threats. They're not to the European people. It's to the European elites. I'd just like to know why you can't go there and throw them out their windows. Can you free the European people? These are big questions to ask. What about the German people? They're going to carry the guilt of the Second World War? Where'd all the funding come from for Adolf Hitler? I mean, big questions. Maybe they need to focus on a few foundational things first, and maybe in the future, trust the plan if you dare. We're going to hear some strong rhetoric on, a dismantling of the security state over time, so on and so forth. Better and stricter rules on AI, all the good rhetoric, and I'd really like to see a lot of them in jail. Well, that's going to be up to you, because I assure you, if you bark loud enough and engage in politics, if you get out on the street and bypass the power of the internet to keep you compressed and down and people can't hear you, you're going to make a difference. The people that are running this are I'd say there's literally 2,000 to 3,000 people that were running the previous show, literally. And they were using a lot of lies, a lot of blackmail, a lot of coercion, and a lot of fake narratives to get people to do what they wanted. The people that were within the NSA, CIA, DIA, now of course we have the private contractors in the last 20 years. That's the big killer. We've got to talk about private contractors and absolutely wiping out these private contractors and putting the military-industrial complex completely under the thumb of government. No private company should be making weapons of war for profit, ever. You may have some private contractors who are doing stuff that are specialists in some material science, fine, but you do not farm out. Lockheed should be completely nationalized and put in their hands, as should they all, apart from maybe Boeing and a few others as they get contracts because they have certain expertise. But a complete reshaping and a more complicated narrative has to be pushed, more complicated rhetoric, so we can understand and discuss these things loudly. Because if you put it out there, you begin the process of change. It's a bit like prayer, intention. What is your intention? When you put it out there, you'll be surprised how quickly things can change, even with the electronic grip that is crushing us. And when you step outside the internet, you're totally free. They literally have no mechanisms, because they can't get enough people to do their dirty work. Too many people know now. And they've got to constantly have narrators and constantly have actors to keep containing the narrative and slowing it down. And we are seeing slowly, I mean, it's slow as hell. We are slowly seeing a push now into really containing the AI revolution that's coming, which must be pushed forward at rapid rate, and the US must dominate. And it's not fake. And I'll hammer down 10 times now. I'll triple down, quadruple down. AI ain't going away. It's not a bust. It is more powerful than you can possibly imagine. We're just getting the shitty large language models. We get the shitty 20-year-old retail version. They just want us to input. For it to work, you must have constant human input. That's why they want us inputting every thought, every feeling, every minute of every day. Otherwise, what they want is not going to work. AI can be an absolute blessing into material science and all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm a techno freak. I love reading about technology. But also the dangers are so great that just a few people can control a lot of people. And automating systems has got to stop. I don't want AI anywhere near the court system. I want the corruption within the courts fixed by an engaged citizenry. Because they're going to say, oh, they're so corrupt, the police are corrupt, this is corrupt. We need AI, we need automated robots that can't be corrupted. God help us if that rhetoric, which is just a small amount of rhetoric at the moment, God help us if that takes off. And that's going to be a big worry. It's a really big worry. But I think we're going to see a backlash against that. I actually think we're going to see a lot of positive things this year. 2026 is going to be a whole lot better than 2025 for everybody. A whole lot better. I think you're going to see that tension you're feeling, that huge collective tension. And believe me, when you're fully Scorpio like me with a lot of Pluto, it's killing me. It's absolutely killing me. It's going to lift March, April, May. It's going to lift. And you're going to see the fear porn. There's going to be a reaction against this fear porn bullshit, this constant trying to terrorize people, these bullshit thumbnails they put up, the ridiculous titles, their ridiculous arguments. You know, Tucker Carlson never said Jesus in his life. Now he's Jesus, Jesus. Oh, I've got demons attack me. And it's like, I'm sorry, anyone can't see through this acting bullshit? I mean, seriously. Anyone who's trying to condense and contain American power is working for Jewish power. America, for the first time, is unleashing. That's why suddenly all the dogs are suddenly silent. These are all Jewish power dogs they put in place. And they can run it out of Europe. Half of them run to Europe, or their bank accounts are in Europe, or they're in freaking Miami, or they're up there around Washington, D.C. And that's why the cleanup that's occurring external to the United States really needs to start turning internally to the United States. Because I don't see any arrests taking place, do you? I've seen a few people disappear suddenly. We've seen contracts lost. We've seen the shipping of the chips back to the United States. That's a big tell when they said overtly, we are shipping this national security back to the US. Now we've got to see IMAC and ASML move back. And, an awful lot of engineers are going to have to be brought with them from Taiwan, ASML, IMEC, and Taiwan Semiconductor. And that's why the blockade of Taiwan will probably take place this year. Won't be an invasion, it'll be a blockade, because I'll string the blockade out for about a year or so. And we'll see whether they hand Taiwan over or whatever. But who knows? Maybe they'll free China, but why would they do that? They want to control the asset. He's just sitting there vulnerable. Why not keep him like Putin, and you can control him and do your bidding? That is unfortunately the real place of real politics right now, and God willing that will change sooner rather than later. So the next step, positive, will be that you will see a shift. You will see news reports talking about Taiwan Semiconductor engineers who are already in Phoenix, Arizona, more moving over. You will see ASML in the Netherlands and in Belgium, IMEC. I never knew about it till 2 months ago, never heard of it. And yet it is like the cutting edge. Cutting edge, absolute cutting edge of research and development. Of course, they still rely on the US supply chain. They still rely on DARPA, US Energy, the Energy, what do you call it? The Energy Commission, which is a big one. The ones that invented the atom bomb that were funding and pushing it. And a whole range of military industrial contractors and others based in the United States. And of course, the incredible German Zeiss lenses that the Germans produce. It really is a worldwide effort. Of course it is. It's a globalist effort. It needed to remain a Russian effort and an American effort. And I'm always pleased when I see Andy Gove, that Hungarian Jew who was the louder, helped build Intel. And he screamed for years and no one would listen. That's why no one's heard of it. And people say, who the hell's Andy Grove? Well, unless you're interested in the history of Intel and tech, you've never heard Andy Grove. But there was Robert Noyce, what's his name, Gordon Moore, all the guys that started Intel Corporation. Good people. And only Andy Gove swore when all that manufacturing was being sent overseas, when Apple, thinking they were smart, were manufacturing, he was screaming. You never heard of him. But you hear of all these other effing Jews and their little Jew proxies. They're always getting pushed by Forbes and Time as the man of the year or something, and they're all shipping everything overseas. And Andy Gove said, these are national security issues, not just employment issues. You've never heard of him. Of course you've never heard of him. We never hear from people like that because they are the antithesis of the globalist system. Globalist system is City of London Crown corporate system. City of London and the EU. The old European families, 13 families mixed in with the old Hoofjuden, ruling the world, convinced because they take too much cocaine and they've got too much time on their hands and they never work for a living, that they are somehow related to King David. Because when you're filthy rich in the stratosphere of the billionaire class, guess what? Guess what? You don't live in a normal world. Your brain changes. You're not struggling to pay your bills. You're not happy because you went for a walk down the beach and saw the sunset. You're living in the stratosphere of the billionaire class and above. And it's all about power, intellectual concepts, ostensibly good because they believe, well, the planet has to be managed. You've got 1.2 billion Indians, 800 million Chinese. What are we going to do with them? We can't feed them all. We can't just keep growing exponentially. We're going to have to, these are big issues we have to discuss, because if we do not discuss them, because they wreck the education system and create gangsterism, popular culture, degenerate culture, and we don't have conversations like this. We don't have these conversations. So they say, we'll have them for you and we'll do it for you. And we'll cull you kindly, or maybe we won't cull you so kindly. And that is ultimately our fault, because we can't appear to move past sitting on our ass selling coffee mugs and t-shirts. And we will get everything we damn well deserve. Let's go on.
Nationalized in 2007. Exxon lost $1 billion. The World Bank Arbitration Court did award them $77 million for Venezuela seizing their assets. But so far, that has not been paid out. When it comes to ConocoPhillips in 2007.
Oh, I just want to add, it's nothing to do with oil. They don't need Venezuelan oil. It's like, yeah, it's nice, icing on the cake. This is about, here's what you'll never hear. This is about securing the supply chain as they shift more and more out of China, and not just China, Asia in general, and more back to the United States. So Mexico has to be a stable democracy without all the corruption and bullshit, and a lot of that is coming out of Europe, where all their bank accounts are, not just in the US. And then you're going to have Colombia and Venezuela. They will be stable. Yes, they will control. Just in case you're from Latin America, I hate to break it to you, do you think Australia has an independent foreign and domestic policy? Do you think any of these countries do? And I'm sorry, if I'm going to be ruled, I'm happy to be ruled by America, as long as I have a say in their corruption. And that's what I want to see. If America's going to rule and rule for a long time, rightly so, well, it better get their corruption and their bullshit under control. Because if you want to go on about Venezuela and political prisoners, I was treated worse than the average political prisoner in Venezuela. It was outrageous what happened to me in a first world parliamentary democracy. So don't give you bullshit about the freedoms people enjoy in the West. Because if you open your mouth too much in the US, they'll come to your house, say you're selling guns and blow your brains out at the door. They'll plant kiddie porn on your computer. They'll plant drugs. The IRS will come and eviscerate your asshole until your marriage is finished and you're broke. So you lift your game, America. Lift your game.
Lost $30 billion. Years later, Conoco got an $8.4 billion settlement, but has only received $2 billion of that payment. So they have to be a little wary about going back into Venezuela, even though leadership has changed. Chevron chose to continue operating in Venezuela, but you mentioned that company that runs the oil there.
Chevron chose to keep operating. Read between the lines.
Yeah.
It's state-owned. The pipelines haven't been updated in 50 years. The cost to update to return to peak production would cost $58 billion. And then Charles Payne, we interviewed him. He said it could even cost $100.
Oh, what a lie. Come on, it's Venezuela. $3 billion, $4 billion. Sorry, I'm not an oil and gas executive and expert in pipeline building, but I kind of been around from Western Australia where there's a lot of oil and gas stuff, or particularly gas and oil, but they won't tell you about the vast oil reserves in Australia. I know a lot about mining and stuff in Australia. You're not spending $50 to $100 billion on oil pipelines. Give it a, I mean, that is so freaking absurd. Why do they even say stuff like that?
That's why Donald Trump says these oil companies want to invest $100 billion to fix these pipelines.
So are you going to steal $100 billion out of Venezuela? Is that what you're saying? No oil pipeline in history. The oil pipelines are already there. If you're replacing them, what? It costs $100 billion or $50 billion. You're not like you're ripping through the Amazon, cutting down vast swathes of rainforest. The clearing's already cleared. So this is, again, if I see crap, I'm going to call it out. This is a setup for theft. That's what it is.
They're going to take over for Venezuela's PDVSA, which is a state-run company. And the important thing here, and we're going to talk to the man on the tip of the spear that will lead the effort, Energy Secretary Chris Wright, a little bit later. Talk about what this means.
What's he, the Venezuelan czar? Is he involved with Kissinger and Associates? Come on, please. Look, I don't want to look it up because it'll be too painful. It'll be too painful.
for not only America's interest, but also for the Venezuelan people.
Yeah, the president's going to put the arm on them. He's going to make sure, I think, that they come across.
There was some video yesterday that was released of the political prisoners that were released from prison, hugging their wives, just thrown in prison because the leader doesn't agree with them and was running against him.
Would you like us to put all the people you've thrown in jail just in the United States? I mean, Fox News, you have no shame, do you? Absolutely no shame. Imagine that. See, this is what I mean about why you're not liked, America. You're not liked because of stuff like this. People in Latin America know you're full of shit and a giant hypocrite. And if you actually went out and apologized to them and said, rules have changed, we apologize, particularly for the Kissinger and Associates, Council on Foreign Relations, Carnegie, Rockefeller Foundation, Trilateral Commission, Atlantic Council, assholes from Europe who were formulating policy and assisting in the blackmail and corruption of our government. We apologize. We are now Pan-American nationalists, and we're going to make you rich, and we're going to work together, and we will be a lighthouse on the hill, Latin America, Central America, Mexico, South America. We will be powerful, and you will have constitutions and bills of rights just like us, and we will share technology, and we'll be an example for the rest of the world. Imagine something inspiring, maybe even said in Spanish. Get out there and push that narrative. You don't think they'll be lining up and cheering? You cannot move forward from the past until you acknowledge the past, until you apologize. And it would have massive, subtle, energetic effects throughout the region. But the key always goes back to the 70s and 80s. Had they built the supply chain in Mexico, Central and South America from the beginning, none of this would have happened. None of it. So, whose interest was served by putting the supply chain in Asia?
So that's one of the main boxes people wanted checked.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
All right. Well, there you go. Fox News doing their best bullshit, but I use them merely as a talking point. What I just said in an impassioned plea, having been here now for 6 years and shamefully still can't speak Spanish, in my defense, I have been unwell and always leaving, so, I think I can say with just a little bit of authority, not a lot, but just because I pick up energies and I like to talk. I always talk to people, Uber drivers, taxi drivers, they speak English, I always try to talk. And I've spoken to some pretty interesting people around here, always seem to bump into interesting people. It's clear to me that there's a great deal of hatred for the United States from an intellectual class. It's not everyone, but I'd say 30% of the Mexican population and in general Latin America fucking despise the United States and hate with a deep hatred, a deep, deep, deep hatred for obvious reasons. And for those of you, not a Gen X, I was born in 1970, but if you were born 1970 before, you will remember growing up through the 70s and watching the horror movie on the TV, the 6:30 news. You will remember all the death squads and all the misery through the 70s and 80s, civil war in Lebanon and all that stuff. You will remember the death squads, the horrors, and yes, the Soviet Union was in here stirring trouble too, but it was not handled well. And every Latin American dictator they put in, fine, put a Latin American dictator in. Is there any reason they had their bank accounts in Miami and yet robbed their people blind? Is there any reason the most powerful country in the world with nuclear weapons, a giant military industrial complex, you mean to say, again, simple questions, you couldn't put a dictator in who was good to his people, that raised the standard of living, encouraged private institutions, encouraged the private economic class, encouraged small businesses, encouraged economic development, a bit of milk to the kids, lowered the infant mortality rate, gave a little bit of land, he'd let people farm and grow a little bit of. You mean you couldn't have done that? Why is it every asshole you put in power was an effing asshole? And then they go, oh my God, the communists are coming. Well, the communists are coming in because you're treating people pretty badly. And then what happens? You get some communist halfwit who comes in and does the same thing to the people. It's almost as like there's this right-left dialectic of leaving people in misery. And their object is always to make sure America is hated. And everyone looks to Europe, the cultured Europeans, to save them. You see the scam here, don't you? So let me tell you something, America. I'm just one guy, but I've done a fair bit. And you send a lot of interesting people to come down and talk with me. Not lately, of course. But maybe if you just went Marco Rubio speaks fluent Spanish. It'd be a good time to form communities or form institutions to start having local grassroots organizations. Start with sorry. We are sorry for the past. We should have been that lighthouse on the hill. We have been utterly corrupted, particularly post-World War II. We have been utterly penetrated, and we are sorry. We are going to restore you to a reasonable system of government, whatever exactly that is. But I would hope it would be a specifically US-style limited republic. And I hope the people would say, we want a Bill of Rights and a Constitution. In fact, word for word, in God we trust, word for word. I just want the US just adopt that Bill of Rights and Constitution. Adopt it. And when people have economic hope, economic activity, when they don't have degenerate pop culture, which is a literal psychological warfare program. It's not an unfortunate product of freedom. It is a literal psychological warfare program, from the music industry to the gangsterism bullshit they put in our Hollywood movies. We need to start encouraging higher frequencies, better education, individual freedom, and also individual enlightenment. The acorn can become an oak and not a donkey, as Carl Gustav Jung would say. Individuation, we need psychological enlightenment, psychological understanding. Let's start with the so-called New Age. I'm not talking about witchcraft, sorcery, and predicting the future per se. I'm talking about things like kinesiology, knowing your body, listening to your body, concepts such as the body-mind, dream work, astrology. I'm talking about understanding my psychological structure. They know damn well how powerful astrology is because they've got the AI. They can literally map human behavior and match it to a birth chart. They know. Somebody's done their MA, they've done their master's or their PhD on this in some little dodgy government agency, showing astrology is real. How is it real? You're merely projecting onto the universe reality. Could be a chicken entrail. You're projecting onto the heavens. We can debate whether the energies are affecting this or affecting that, because we're getting into the quantum level, which is what? What is inner and what is outer? What is inner? What is outer? I'm looking at myself in the mirror. We need kids, less algebra, unless you're an algebra expert going on to do chemistry or whatever you're doing, less algebra, more know thyself. I want psychological enlightenment. I want to talk Jungian style terms of the shadow, dream work, astrology, know thyself, individuation. To individuate, to be what I am, takes freedom. And you can see how the US Constitution and that concepts from that Jungian Swiss psychoanalyst, and of course, Jesus himself, I have come to free the slaves. Nothing more profound when he says, I have come to free the slaves. He's quoting then from the Old Testament, the Jewish Old Testament, the Tanakh. I have come to free the slaves, when he got up there and was run out of the temple. When he said, I'm here. I have come to free the slaves with these principles. God created the United States to free humanity, to usher us into a total new age, the age of Aquarius. Literally, we are in that process right now, particularly with Pluto and Aquarius. You can either fight it and make yourself miserable, or you can start thinking in new concepts, new ways, and start to demand the churches, if they're going to survive at all, whether it's the churches, the synagogues, the temples, or whatever, the mosques. It's not enough to give people written ideologies and just tell them to follow the rules and everything will be fine. It's not enough, obviously. People need to know God, not just hear about it. Not be, well, you'll know God. No, I want to know God now. And you can, by the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. You will become a living stone. And you will become a temple, an indwelling place for the Holy Spirit. And if you're lucky, before they flip the switch, you will have a direct experience of the Godhead, and you will know God exists. You will know. No one will have to tell you. You will know everything for that split second. God willing, we will have created a popular culture, political structures and otherwise, so that people can actually absorb these new spiritual things that are coming forward as we speak. So we can integrate high technology and life in the 3D world, because this is where we live. We can integrate all these things without becoming a bunch of new age, flaky, freaking idiots, selfish assholes. Everything's changing, baby, and it's changing fast. I see it in many ways as a positive thing, but I understand the dangers we face in social duty. But 2026 is going to be better than 2025. I'm asking you, as I have to sit here and ponder imponderables and look at the roof, and what am I doing? Why am I feeling? Why am I self-destructing? I can't stand this anymore. Because I just want to go home. I just want to go home. I want a fucking apology, not just for me, it's for what you did. A parliamentary first world democracy, Australia. I watched you just corruptly deal with me and laugh at me. You did it in full view and everyone went along with it, even though privately they were apologising. And if that's you, Australia, rotten fucking hell. If that's you, America, you will have an armed insurgency and you will pay a heavy price. Because let me tell you, you're going to have 3,000 Luigis on the street soon if you don't start getting the rich to pay some fucking tax. And I'm talking about these giant corporations and all their tricks to hide the money. They're clever lawyers' tricks to never realise profit, so they never pay any tax. And then they ship it all overseas and shove it in their Cayman Island bank accounts. That better end. These tax havens better end. All of this has to end. And we need some rhetoric on that as well. Overall, positive things are occurring. This is exactly what needs to happen. Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico, secure the supply chain. These are big geopolitical issues. You can't change it all in a day, but geez, some heads have got to roll. Are they going to roll? They're not going to roll. They're going to make the excuse, things are changing, and just let these people die, and then we'll hold them accountable once they're dead. Or you can change things. I've already told you how to change things, but because we don't get the changes we want in 5 minutes, we just give up and go away and put memes on Substack. And they're still sitting there. One guy said, I don't know what else to do. He was putting up some pretty intelligent memes and stuff. I said, dude, anyone of importance ain't seeing them. Imagine you're all just talking to each other in a bubble and then you ask, well, how are you going to instigate political change? You're on the Department of Defense Substack. They have no answer. I can't even explain it psychologically, literally. And the only conclusion is, well, they're getting some money and they're doing it for money, so what does it make them? I actually start getting quite emotional that we've had all these documentaries and all this stuff, and I've got to believe that bot. These aren't just stupid, but these are bots. They have to be bots. They have to be little personalities they've programmed into the computer. For God's sake, how could anyone just sit there after all we have learned about the bubbles and how they want us online and we just talk to chatbots all day, and in that way they diffuse like a protest. Everyone screams and yells, goes home, nothing changes. It's just a valve so that the adults can continue to do whatever they need to do while the silly children feel better about themselves, throw a fist, but deep down they just want to remain children and have someone take care of them, which is really the big problem. The problem is the world is perfect. The problem is us. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll be hearing from me every day. Have a good day, have a good weekend, all that good stuff, and you'll be hearing from me every day, 5 days a week. Talk soon.